Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and iOS 17 concerns continue to grow as there's more and more serious bugs. iPhone 16 has more news about it, and we may get some new iPads this week. We'll talk about that and more in this week's Apple News Update for the week of October 15th, 2023. Now, Apple has a new online store that's live today in Chile. Chilean residents can now purchase iPhones, iPads, Macs, and other products directly from Apple, where before they had to go through third-party retailers. This should help with consistency of pricing and hopefully some better service as well. If you're in Chile, I'd love to hear from you in the comments below if you're able to see that now as well. Apple released a new support document explaining how you should actually clean your iPhone 15. If we go here, you'll see that we have iPhone 15, 14, all the way down to the iPhone 11 models, but they have a specific area here where it says that your iPhone has a fingerprint-resistant oleophobic oil repellent coating. Cleaning products and abrasive materials will diminish the coating and might scratch your iPhone. So they talk about how to clean it, and it even says for iPhone 15 and iPhone 15 Pro Max, the oil from your skin might temporarily alter the color of the outside band. Wiping your iPhone with a soft, slightly damp, lint-free cloth will restore the original look. They're talking about the titanium finish, and I left this on here just to show you how bad it gets just using it regularly on the blue iPhone with the titanium. So it's easily wipe-offable, but it's something that looks pretty poor until you wipe it off. But I let it stay there since I've been using it for a day or so without cleaning it like that. I'll clean it after the video. You also may notice that I'm using Chrome. I was having an issue with Safari using a ton of battery. I disabled Safari using screen time, and now I'm using Chrome to hopefully save some power. So far it seems to be working, but we'll see how it goes over the next few days. And speaking of Google with Chrome, Google apparently pays Apple $18 to $20 billion a year to have Apple have Chrome as its default search engine. So within iOS, you can change that to DuckDuckGo or Bing, and Bing apparently tried to get in there as well to try to be the default search engine. So Apple makes a tremendous amount of money, and this is being revealed since the Department of Justice is looking into Google more and more as to how it conducts its business, and maybe if it's a monopoly or something else. So based off of that and those different lawsuits going on, we're getting more information about that. But that's a huge amount of money and profit going to Apple just to have it as the default search engine. When you buy a new iPhone and it's in the box, it often has to be updated when you're setting it up. Apple is trying to get around this with an all-new system, according to Mark Gurman in his latest Power On newsletter. It's basically a custom-designed device that you would place the phone on while it's in the box. They could do this in the store, and it will wake the phone up and then update the OS, so when you go to set it up, you don't need to do it separately. I thought they already had something like this in place, but apparently not, and they should be able to do that more easily when you get a new iPhone. So hopefully we'll see less of those software updates when you go to install it for the first time, maybe transfer your data and more. There's a couple deals worth talking about this week, and the first one has to do with Beats Studio Pro. I unboxed these in a separate video, and they're okay. They're not phenomenal, but they're half off now, down to $179, sold directly from Beats on Amazon. I'll link them in the description, but for that price, I definitely think they're worth it. They are a little plasticky. They're nowhere near the build quality of AirPods Max, but we do have USB-C. We can use an external connection, all built in, and they sound pretty good. They're not phenomenal or anything like that, but if you like the sound of Beats in general, you'll probably really like these. Also, the Series 9 Apple Watch is discounted a little bit. I'll link that in the description along with other discounts available this week. Now, iOS 17 has been plagued with early release bugs, more serious than we saw in previous years from what I remember anyway. One of them in particular is it shutting off at night, just completely shutting off, and if you go into our settings, we'll go down to battery. You can actually see this by going over the last few days, and you'll see when it's charging, there'll just be a gap here where it restarted on its own if you're having that issue. I've heard that. We're having issues with the alarms not going off. If you have an alarm set, whether that's a sleep schedule, you set up a new alarm, maybe to wake you up at 9 a.m. or 8 a.m., and it sometimes just doesn't go off. I had this happen in my house. My daughter actually had hers set up, and it never went off. We had to wake her up so she could get ready in the morning. So it was unusual to see that. She's on 17.0.3 on an iPhone 14 Plus, and it didn't work. Also, something else we're seeing more recently is contacts disappearing. Either if you're in your messages, you're in your contacts app, the photos are disappearing. Sometimes the name is disappearing altogether and it doesn't recognize someone. I actually noticed this recently with someone that I talk to regularly. It just showed their phone number and I had to ask who it was. So that's an odd bug that I've heard recently. I heard it from my wife, and then also heard it from my brother-in-law again later on, just yesterday actually. So it's definitely an issue people are experiencing, and I tweeted about it and people seem to have that same issue as well. And because of that, Apple really needs to push out an update very, very soon. iOS 17.0.4 could release to fix that, but we're seeing no signs of that, and I would have expected that sometime today already. Maybe it could come later today, or maybe Apple will just wait until iOS 17.1. We're expecting iOS 17.1 release candidate as soon as tomorrow, with a final release to the public sometime on the 23rd or 24th. That was leaked by a French website called iPhone Soft, referencing the RF radiation fix that Apple's already acknowledged for the iPhone 12. So because of that, we can expect that early next week to the public, then we'll move on to iOS 17.2 betas. So we could see maybe a small interim fix sometime this week with 17.0.4, or they'll just wait until next week to fix it altogether. So hopefully they acknowledge that issue and then let us know that they're actually going to fix it. Now, as far as new updates, as far as events and October events, Apple may release a new iPad. There's conflicting rumors about that as of yesterday. This past weekend, we had some information from Supercharged and 9 to 5 Mac saying we could see iPad mini and iPad Air as soon as this week. However, Mark Gurman and Ming Chi Kuo have previously stated that it will be later on, and Mark Gurman has actually said there will be no iPad release this month, but it would be rather maybe next month or before the end of the year. So that's something that I thought was a bit different than we normally get, as we could see a new iPad mini with updated internals, USB-C, which we already have, but maybe a faster version, an updated chipset, updated cameras, and a fix to that jelly scrolling of the display. So those things are what we would expect, but whether or not they'll be soon, I would say they're more likely in November after the actual call that they have about their earnings. That's in early November, I talked about last week, so I would expect it after that, as that's what Apple typically does, so sometime after that call. Now, another thing we could see are new AirPods Max. AirPods Max have been out for a while, and they don't have USB-C. We still have Lightning, and they could replace it with USB-C, have a minor update, something along those lines. So we could see an updated version, as we're not seeing these in stock in some places around the world. So AirPods Max could get an update, and Mac Adakara actually believes the update will not be for iPads this week, but rather a new Apple Pencil. We've heard rumors of a new USB-C based Apple Pencil with removable tips that are magnetic. So instead of having to unscrew the tip, replace it when you need to, there could be different variants of this where it actually just adheres magnetically, and then you could swap them out quickly to give you a different feel when maybe you're drawing versus painting versus using a pen versus a pencil. So that's something we could see very soon. Maybe this week we'll see it. If not, we could see it maybe along with those new iPads. It's odd for them not to launch an Apple Pencil along with the iPads, though. Also, future iPads, including the Pro, Air, and Mini, are looking like they'll eventually switch to OLED like we have in the iPhone. According to the Naver blog, which is a Korean website, they said Apple is in negotiations with OLED manufacturers now to supply them for future iPads. We've heard that a lot for iPads Pro, and we could see them switch from Mini LED to OLED. We've been hearing these rumors quite a bit, but it could be a year or so out. Every year we hear about new iPhones right after they release the current iPhones. Apple works on these usually about 3 years in advance, and they're working on iPhone 16 models now. With this year's iPhone, of course, we had titanium and the new action button, but the latest information says we're going to have what's called a capture button. Now, this seems very off to me, as Apple is supposedly going to put it below the power sleep wake button, but Apple typically gets rid of buttons. They don't add buttons. So if they add a button, I would be a bit surprised, but we'll have to wait and see in a year or so if that's actually true. It could be something that they're just relocating the action button to a more convenient place where it would be near your thumb. Right now, it's a bit awkward to press that action button. So that makes more sense to me, but we really have no information yet about that. Also, we expect larger displays at 6.3 and 6.9 inches. A new A18 chipset is the latest information, of course, and A18 Pro with Wi-Fi 7 support. And also we're hearing about an even more updated 5G modem than we have currently in the 15 Pro phones. So we would have a Qualcomm Snapdragon X75 modem with faster speeds. A 48 megapixel ultra wide is another thing we could get, as well as the 5x zoom on the iPhone 16 Pro and not just the Max phone. So lots of things we're hearing about, but it does take a while before Apple actually finalizes this. Early next year, typically, they'll start to finalize that and then really start to ramp things up around June. So it takes a little while, but we are already hearing about a lot of different things we could expect. Digitimes has said Apple plans to release new M3 MacBooks next year, and also Mark Gurman said this weekend, where Apple would update the MacBook Air and MacBook Pro models with an M3 upgrade. That makes sense. They've been upgrading their chips about every 18 months or so it makes a lot of sense that they would update these. However, some people have said we could have an update before the end of the year, maybe on the iMac. The iMac is long due for an M2 upgrade or something else, so we could see that along with some new options, maybe even an M2 Pro. Apple is also planning updated OLED-based MacBooks, and this seems to be something they're doing across their lineup. Now, I've always thought they'd switch over to micro LED that we've heard about on the watch, and that makes more sense to me, but maybe that doesn't make sense for a MacBook. So OLED-based MacBooks are still a couple years away, according to leaker Ross Young, who has a very accurate track record. So we could just see these mini LED displays. Hopefully we'll go to micro LED and get rid of OLED altogether, as there's advantages to that with color accuracy and longevity. Now, Apple's upcoming Vision Pro headset isn't out yet, but Apple is working on a cheaper variant, according to Gurman. One way Apple's planning to reduce the overall cost is to get rid of the eyesight feature, which in my opinion is great because it's incredibly creepy. I don't want to walk up to someone using a Vision Pro and then all of a sudden see fake eyes look back at me. To me, that's something that I haven't heard really anybody say a positive thing about. So that's a little odd to me. Let me know what you think about it in the comments below. So lots to look forward to. Hopefully a lot of bug fixes with iOS 17 here soon in the future. And let me know if you're experiencing any major issues with iOS 17 in the comments below. I'll link this wallpaper in the description like I normally do. And if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. And if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.